Hello, friends. You've just unlocked another chapter of the past, hidden, untold, and waiting to be discovered. This is Buried Truths. Let's view the video. In 1587, over 100 settlers vanished from Roanoke Island, leaving behind no bodies, no battle, and only one cryptic clue. This mystery, the Lost Colony, remains unsolved even after centuries. But to understand what went wrong, we must begin at the start, England's ambition to plant its flag in the New World. During the late 1500s, England was desperate to challenge Spanish dominance in the Americas. Queen Elizabeth I granted Sir Walter Raleigh a charter to establish a colony in North America. This move was strategic: gain wealth, spread Protestantism, and create a naval foothold against Spain's growing empire across the Atlantic. Raleigh never personally sailed to the New World. Instead, he financed and authorized expeditions. In 1584, the first exploratory voyage led by Philip Amadas and Arthur Barlow returned with glowing reports of Roanoke Island, praising its fertile land and friendly natives. It seemed like the perfect site for settlement. Encouraged by the reports, Raleigh sponsored a colony in 1585 under Sir Richard Grenville and Ralph Lane. However, poor relations with native tribes, dwindling food, and lack of reinforcements forced them to abandon the colony. When Sir Francis Drake arrived in 1586, the surviving colonists left with him, disillusioned. Undeterred, Raleigh launched a second attempt. In 1587, 117 settlers, including families and women, departed under Governor John White. This time, it wasn't a military outpost. It was a true civilian colony. Among them was White's daughter, Eleanor Dare, who would give birth to Virginia Dare, the first English child born in America. The colony was placed on Roanoke Island again, but from the start tensions ran high. Croatoan natives were wary, and supplies ran low. Urged by the settlers, White agreed to sail back to England for help. It was a risky decision, but no one could predict what would unfold during his absence. Roanoke was not just a settlement. It was England's great experiment, a symbol of hope, empire, and national pride. The colonists were pioneers, chasing dreams across the ocean. But with White's departure, their fate hung in the balance, and history was about to take a dark and silent turn. The dream of a new English colony quickly turned into a nightmare. The settlers of Roanoke found themselves in a hostile environment, surrounded by unfamiliar landscapes, distant allies, and dwindling resources. Hope clashed with harsh reality as survival became their daily battle, and every decision carried consequences that would echo through history. Roanoke Island looked promising on paper, but the soil was poor, and farming failed. The settlers lacked practical skills for frontier life. Many were artisans or gentlemen, not farmers. Their crops withered in the heat, fish were seasonal, and hunting required experience they simply didn't have. Hunger crept in fast. To survive, the settlers turned to local Native American tribes for food and guidance. At first, relations were cautious but civil. The Croatoans, in particular, offered aid. However, tensions escalated when misunderstandings occurred. Livestock trampled gardens, and trade deals went wrong. Fear bred mistrust, and skirmishes followed. One tragic incident deepened the divide. A misunderstanding led to the killing of a native leader. Retaliation followed swiftly. Several settlers were ambushed in the woods, and morale plummeted. The colonists began building defensive structures, but isolation made them vulnerable. The dream of peaceful coexistence dissolved into suspicion and fear. Disease also struck the colony. Without medical knowledge or proper sanitation, infections spread. Freshwater sources became polluted, and the harsh coastal climate made it worse. Malaria and dysentery plagued them. As bodies weakened, tempers rose. Leadership was questioned, and unity began to unravel within the walls of their wooden fort. Governor John White tried to maintain order, but the settlers were growing desperate. Supply ships from England were delayed, and hope of relief faded. Some began to whisper about moving inland. Others talked of merging with friendly tribes. Everyone knew they were running out of time and options. By the end of that year, Roanoke, was no longer a hopeful outpost, but a place of dread. Its people were hungry, scared, and surrounded by danger. The land they came to tame was taming them instead. And the longer help took to arrive, the further they slipped toward the unknown. With Roanoke teetering on the edge of collapse, the settlers urged Governor John White to return to England for help. Despite deep reluctance to leave his family behind, including his newborn granddaughter, White agreed. He sailed in late 1587, unaware that fate and war would keep him from returning for years. England was no longer peaceful. The looming threat of a Spanish invasion dominated Queen Elizabeth's court. As White arrived in England, the Spanish Armada was preparing to attack. All English ships were ordered to remain for national defense. White's requests for a resupply mission were repeatedly denied or delayed. Frustrated but determined, White tried to secure private vessels. In 1588, he finally left England with 2 small ships, but the voyage was cursed. Pirates attacked, and precious supplies were lost. Badly damaged, White was forced to abandon the mission and return to England once again, empty-handed. Years passed. White grew desperate. It wasn't until 1590, 3 years after he had left, that he secured passage back to Roanoke. A private expedition finally agreed to transport him. He boarded with urgency and dread, praying that the settlers were still alive, that his daughter and granddaughter had somehow endured. When White arrived at Roanoke, he was greeted by eerie silence. The colony was abandoned. Buildings were dismantled, not destroyed. No signs of violence, no graves, no bodies, just the word Croatoan carved into a post. Another carving, CRO, on a tree nearby suggested they had moved, but moved. Where? White wanted to search Croatoan Island immediately, but storms and a damaged ship made it impossible. The captain refused to wait. Heartbroken, White was forced to sail back to England without finding a single colonist. He would never return again. His family, his people, vanished without a trace. John White spent the rest of his life haunted by the mystery. His accounts provide our only first-hand insight into the Lost Colony. What he found, or failed to find, turned Roanoke from a struggling settlement into one of history's greatest enigmas. The trail had gone cold, and the mystery was now complete. When John White stepped onto Roanoke Island in 1590, he found no welcoming party, no laughter, no smoke rising from chimneys. The fort was eerily silent. The settlement had been carefully dismantled, not destroyed, suggesting an organized departure. Yet no one knew when, where, or why the settlers had left everything behind. What disturbed White most was the absence of any signs of struggle. There were no graves, no bones, no scorched earth, only emptiness. Every hut, tool, and storage item had been neatly removed or abandoned. The fences were down, and nature had begun to reclaim what was left behind. The only clues left behind were the carvings. CRO was etched into a tree near the edge of the settlement. Nearby, the word Croatoan was found carved into a post of the palisade. Crucially, there was no cross or distress signal, suggesting the move was voluntary, not forced. White believed the settlers had relocated to Croatoan Island, home of the friendly Croatoan tribe. He begged the ship's captain to sail there, but storms and damaged rigging prevented it. With supplies running low and crew morale failing, the captain refused. White had no choice but to abandon the search. Theories quickly arose. Some said the settlers joined local tribes and assimilated. Others feared they'd been wiped out by more hostile groups. Yet the peaceful departure signs didn't align with massacre. It appeared the colony had moved, willingly, but left no trail, no witnesses, and no communication. Searches continued in later years. Explorers combed nearby islands and tribal villages, claiming to see blue-eyed natives or English artifacts. But nothing definitive ever surfaced. No bodies, no journals. No survivors, just stories and whispers carried by the wind. Roanoke had become a legend in real time. Roanoke's empty fort became a symbol of colonial uncertainty, a tale passed from generation to generation. Historians and archaeologists still search for answers. But for John White, The emptiness was personal, a vanished family, a vanished dream. He had returned to bring hope, but instead found only silence and shadows. The mystery of Roanoke's disappearance has inspired centuries of theories. Scholars, archaeologists, and storytellers alike have tried to solve the enigma. With no concrete evidence, speculation became the only map. Each theory is a thread, attempting to weave a narrative out of the silence that John White found in 1590. One of the most discussed theories is assimilation. Many believe the settlers peacefully joined the Croatoan tribe. Later English explorers reported seeing fair-haired Native Americans and villages with English tools. No definitive proof surfaced, but these claims kept the theory alive. It remains the most peaceful and plausible of all hypotheses. Others point to conflict. Some suggest the settlers were attacked by hostile tribes, possibly the Powhatan. Chief Powhatan reportedly claimed responsibility, saying his warriors killed them to prevent further colonization. But no mass grave or signs of destruction were found, and his story was never verified by direct evidence. A darker theory involves Spanish involvement. At the time, Spain and England were bitter enemies. Some believe Spanish forces attacked and destroyed the colony in secret, but Spanish records never mention such an operation, and no artifacts or bodies have been linked to a Spanish raid on Roanoke. Starvation and disease also loom as culprits. The colony had already faced hunger and illness before White left. If the situation worsened, the settlers might have tried to relocate inland for survival and perished in the wild. But again, no trace, no journals, and no known burial sites were ever uncovered. More speculative ideas include supernatural explanations. Some legends speak of curses, ghosts, or mysterious disappearances. While entertaining, there's no evidence to support such tales. Still, the unknown nature of Roanoke's fate gives rise to folklore, turning history into myth in the absence of solid answers. Despite centuries of searching, no conclusive evidence has emerged. Excavations, DNA testing, and tribal oral histories continue to offer fragments, but never certainty. Roanoke remains one of America's oldest and most enduring mysteries. Perhaps the truth was buried with the settlers themselves, lost to time, swallowed by the woods they once called home. Centuries. After Roanoke's disappearance, the mystery still grips imaginations. The Lost Colony became a symbol of historical enigma, inspiring books, plays, and documentaries. It captured both scholarly and popular fascination, serving as one of America's earliest unsolved cases. In the absence of answers, myth and legend filled the empty spaces. The tale of Virginia Dare, John White's granddaughter and the first English child born in the New World, became a mythic icon. Some claimed she grew up among native tribes. Others said she became a ghostly figure wandering the woods. Her story became folklore, separating truth from fantasy with each retelling. Roanoke's legend even seeped into American culture. It appears in television, novels, and even horror stories. The idea of settlers vanishing without a trace creates an irresistible blend of history and suspense. What began as tragedy evolved into a cultural legend, eternally unresolved and widely reimagined. Modern archaeologists haven't given up. In recent decades, digs on Roanoke Island and nearby Hatteras, formerly Croatoan, have yielded clues, European tools, pottery fragments, and weapons. These finds suggest the settlers may have split into smaller groups and assimilated with friendly tribes rather than vanishing outright. A map housed at the British Museum, known as the Virginia Pars map, contained hidden symbols visible only under UV light. One mark, possibly indicating a secret fort inland, reignited interest in 2012. Scholars now believe the settlers may have moved further west, deep into Carolina territory. DNA testing is also being used.
Researchers are comparing genetic data from Native American descendants to identify traces of English ancestry. Though no match has yet confirmed Roanoke's fate, it's one of the most promising tools available, blending modern science with
historical detective work. Roanoke's legacy is not only one of loss, but of resilience. The colonists' story paved the way for Jamestown and future settlements. Though their fate remains a mystery, their courage in facing the unknown left a lasting imprint on American identity, one built not just on success, but enduring questions. Thanks for watching Buried Truths. If you enjoyed uncovering the hidden corners of history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more powerful stories from history's hidden vault. See you in the next video.